Well, the push to have Attorney General Eric Holder identify which lawyers within the Department of Justice worked for suspected terrorists down at Gitmo appears to be growing today. The latest chapter, a new video message that challenges Mr. Holder to specifically reveal these lawyers' identities. Keep in mind he revealed 2, but he refused to reveal the identities of the other 7, although he says there are at least 9 lawyers at the DOJ who fit that description. The ad being released by Keep America Safe, which is an organization launched by Liz Cheney. Take a listen.
The pendulum is starting to swing. An America run by progressives is really, it's about to happen. We're going to be looking for people who share our values.
So who did President Obama's Attorney General Eric Holder hire? 9 lawyers who represented or advocated for terrorist detainees. Who are these government officials? Eric Holder will only name 2. Why the secrecy behind the other 7?
Well, Jennifer Miller-Wise-Dyke is a Republican strategist and former spokeswoman for President Bush, and Marianne Marsh is a Democratic strategist. All right, so this ad goes on, it calls these attorneys, the unnamed attorneys, the Al-Qaeda 7. And now several liberals and Democrats have come out and said this is ludicrous. Even this push is ludicrous to suggest that just because they did work, these lawyers for Gitmo detainees, that they are terrorist sympathizers is outrageous. Marianne, do they have a point?
They do. This is more about politics than it is about protecting America, and you need to look at 2 examples. During the Bush-Cheney years, members of the Justice Department objected to the Guantanamo detainee policy, and yet Liz Cheney said nothing. When John Ashcroft was Attorney General under President Bush, and he put Richard Reed, the shoe bomber, in a county jail near Plymouth Rock and tried him in a federal court next to Logan Airport, Liz Cheney said nothing. So when you look at that, this is clearly a political exercise and, frankly, a witch hunt more than trying to keep America safe from its enemies.
Jennifer, what concern does it cause if lawyers who are at the DOJ now once did work for terrorist suspects down at Gitmo?
Well, look, this president and this attorney general have the right. They won the election. They have the right to put whoever they want into these jobs, whoever they believe continued on their philosophies of judicial practices. So what's important here, though, is there's also the issue of transparency. That was one of the key things that this president ran on. He was going to be transparent. Why don't Americans have the right to know who these people are? Why don't they have the right to know the philosophies and the beliefs of these people that have important posts at the Justice Department, what they abide by? I think that this is a very legitimate issue.
But let me ask you this, Marianne. Who cares what their philosophies are? Why isn't what we care about what the policy is? I mean, let's look at what Attorney General Holder does, how he handles terrorist suspects, and a lot of people have a lot of things to say about that, good and bad. But, you know, doesn't the end result, the end policy, is that not what matters?
That's the only thing that should matter. And frankly, there's precious little difference between how things were handled under the Bush Department of Justice and the Holder Department of Justice. Now, depending upon where you are on the political spectrum, you may think that's a good thing or a bad thing. But what doesn't belong in any of this is politics, because politics didn't keep us safe on 9/11. It's not going to keep us safe now. We need to focus on the people who are threats to our security, catch them, convict them, and punish them.
Jennifer, the statistics are that 34 of America's top 50 law firms have done work for Gitmo detainees. It doesn't necessarily mean that the lawyers at those law firms believe in terrorism. Just because these lawyers worked for Gitmo detainees doesn't mean that they're terrorist sympathizers. Do you think that these critics have gone overboard at all?
I don't think they've gone overboard. I mean, again, what's the secrecy around, protecting the names of these individuals? I wish that this administration would put half as much energy into protecting the CIA officers who got us the valuable intelligence that saved lives by interrogating KSM. You know, if you look at the policies of this administration, one has been to have a show trial for KSM up in New York City. One of the real problems with that is the likelihood of CIA officers, their identities coming out in those trials. I haven't heard any concern from the Justice Department about protecting those individuals, yet we're keeping secret who these political appointees, which frankly should be out in the public domain, what their names are. And let's, on top of that, think about the fact this is the same administration who has barred countless credible people who had the capabilities to have important posts because they had the audacity to, say, lobby for education issues or lobby for countries like Canada. Okay. They're not allowed in this administration, but these folks who defended KSM are.
Well, the transparency question is an interesting one. They did promise that they would do that, and nonetheless, they are not giving up these names. But in any event, the debate will go on because they seem to be at a stalemate. Marianne, Jennifer, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Megyn.
Fox News